So this is the second half of the timeline, and it's predominantly looking at prime ministers, sorry, and laws, right? Laws that you can look up yourself. Disclaimer: this is for entertainment purposes only. This is just the ramblings of an old woman. Right. So, all due respect to the traditional people of this land. They like to say that they've been here 40,000 years, but in actual fact, they have been here probably something more like 55 to 100 million years. I don't know if you know about the skulls that were found in the last couple of years by Stephen and Evan Strong, and one was, I look at that, that's a Syrian head, elongated head, and another moony-faced one with big eyes, and they were buried next to each other. I thought that was really sweet. This is going through history. We've got some laws on the right-hand side. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on before any constitution was ever written for Australia. And we were taught out and out lies at school, a whole lot. So 1606, the Dutch first arrived. During that period of time, 1611, the King James version of the Bible was written. 1770, Captain Cook cruises through. No treaty. I think he had some botanists and those kinds of people with him that had maybe done some drawings possibly. 1778, the first fleet arrives. I believe it's 11 ships, 1,000 people, 300 die on the way. When they first get there, it's very brutal. There's lots of hangings. They can't eat. It's just kind of brutal. But some of the laws going on, so back history, which I'm sure you're familiar with the other timelines that I've done. This was a conglomeration of about 6 or 7 timelines and then some more stuff. School says 40,000 years. Okay. So Unum Sanctum, when the old Vatican, Pope Boniface VIII swiped your soul, 1302. What was there a mention of? Chief saying that there was a room downstairs in the Vatican where they harvest souls. And then motu proprio was how they took equitable claim of your trust, the Sestu Cuvae 1666 trust. There is the 1536 See of Rome. It's the 1689 Rule of Law. First in time, first in law. That's the presumption of law. Must consent to legislation. That's what that's got to do with. Also connected that to the Bill of Rights of the UK, which limits the power of monarchy. It's the right to bear arms. And there should be no cruel or unusual punishment. But like boiled frogs, if you chuck a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put a frog in cold water and heat it slowly, it just boils. So it's a bit of a boiled frog syndrome going on at the moment. And again, I changed the little balls around. I had the balls on the Vatican last time. But this time, I've got the Imperial with little balls on it. Fact, Christian, man, lion, unicorn, fiction, courts, Catholic, St. Edward's. It's been this quandary from the beginning. Created Queensland from the Wasteland Acts out of the Constitution. So that is the Constitution that belongs to Queensland. The 1867. Queensland has royal assent. Walter Bagehot. How would you say that? Bagehot. Bagot? The Wastelands Act and the Partnership Act. Now, after studying David's document, these two came up the most for me. Now, remember, I'll stick a few random things in to give you some concepts with time. 1871 is when the US... No, it was 17, wasn't it? 1871 is another one. That's bankruptcy. Constitution, DC. I thought they'd gone back to the 1780, 1771 or something like that. That's another important date. Getting my dates confused now. Brain like scrambled eggs. Ends lieges. Dead at sea. All right, we've all got one share in the Commonwealth, right? Now, when Queen Victoria died, they cut some more ties and they did the 1901 Constitution of Australia. Made loads of changes, though. Actually, no, the changes were made between the Constitution 1867 and 1900. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 constitutions. I think I'm meant to be onto this one. I think it's this one, 1901. That's the one that says we've got the one share. Right, so here's the deal, right? They were planning this from the start. This is why the whole lot of this need to, this family benefit in any way from any of the takings of the decisions these people made needs to be stripped from them. They always do an Acts Interpretation Act so you can understand the actual Constitution. Yeah, the 1903 Defence Act removed constitutional ties, so they began trading as the Commonwealth of Australia. They were registered on the US Federal Exchange in 1934. But does everyone know their prime ministers? When you take citizenship in America, you've got to name every president there ever was, and you have to name all the states. Edward Barton, 1901. He was a lawyer, and as soon as he'd left there, he went straight into the courts. Alfred Deakin, 1903. The ones indented were not voted in, they just somehow took over. Now, 1911, we've got King George the Fifth being coronated in Melbourne. That's why the shrine is so important. We have the shrine that anchors us through the crown of the law of the not the CESTQV, the 1611 Bible law, the common law, not common law. All right, I don't even know half these people. Watson, Chris, Reed. I'm not going to read them out. You can just see them. All right, 1910, another constitution's written, but they remove all this stuff. Section 69, quarantine, page 791, it says no law at all. Section 92, freedom of movement. Now, 1912, the Titanic sank. 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Rothschilds, JP Morgan, all those guys. Remember, they knocked off the 4 richest people on the Titanic. World War I, 1914 to 18. Subjects, not persons at this stage. They did little changes slowly so that no one noticed. Here we go. 1934, the Commonwealth of Australia is registered the USA Federal Reserve. Oh, between 1919 and 1959, Stalin murdered 10 million people. Just keep it in perspective with the 1918 Commonwealth Electoral Private Seal. So they start writing acts and stuff to start covering their tracks. 1927, King George. No, it's not 27. It's up here. I got that number wrong. I've got to take that out. 1919 Treaty of Versailles. That was to do with after World War I, with money, to do with Germany. United Nations, League of Nations. This is joined to here. 1922, the Upper House of Parliament, Queensland, walk out. It's called a Clayton's Parliament, or like a Clayton's drink. You know, the drink you have when you're not having a drink. like a fake drink, non-alcoholic. They've been out ever since, and that was to do with Spanish flu and World War One. Go look at Article 231 of the Treaty of Versailles. 1930, the Geneva Convention. Now, up until this point, Joseph Lyons, 1931, all of the Governor Generals are appointed by the Queen. They were all lords, and then they oversaw the executive. And then Lyons somehow, oh look, and then he becomes he becomes Governor General. That, of course. Oh, it's Scullin encouraged it, and he voted something like that. So, Foreign Agent Act 1938 states that the registration of the companies, the private corporation, this pertains to police. Their employment title is Foreign Agent Vatican. You could ask them, where is your person-to-person contract seal? They are a police service, not a police. They're not constables anymore. Just keep the peace, and they're just employed by private corporation. So the Wastelands Act was created because of the tolls between the states. Now we're controlled by the United Nations, and the United Nations is a giant unregulated non-governmental organisation, one world government, with zero loyalty to Australia. Now, Menzies, this really irks me. 1963, Maralinga, they set off 12 nuclear weapons, 7 bombs, and there are still 10,000 barrels of radioactive stuff up there. There are still like thousands and thousands of square kilometres that you can't even go on because it's so poisonous. Menzies lied blatantly to Parliament. He said, oh no, doing all these bombs, there's absolutely no way it can hurt anyone or anything or the environment. It's fine. No, absolutely not. They'd already written laws that doesn't hold them liable for anything anyway. Now, these are the people that signed the Lima, and that basically, and they also lied to Parliament, and it basically is just handing more and more rights away. That's the guy that signed it. These are the guys that lied to Parliament about it. Now, the Partnership Act is an act that was the connection between UK and Australia. And essentially, as continental mainland nationals, we reside under the Partnership Act, whereas the leanings very early, as you can see, the Wastelands Act is how they formulated the little chain of events. So they're under the Wastelands Act. So where are we now? Oh, Billy Hughes, eh? Treaty of Versailles, Upper House walks out. You've got the Geneva Convention, human rights. Look them up if you don't know what they are. We've got the Atomic Energy Act 1946, where police constable changes to police service. 1939, Antarctica. They got a base down there, didn't they? 1957, Queen's Speech. I can't help you. 1953, Coronation, where she does the public slip up of words to the public imperial crown and then takes a secret out the back private St. Edward Catholic crown. Hubby's Catholic. Got the war. 1939 to 1945. 1947, Roswell. So things like the Crimes Act of 1914, Australian Citizenship Act of 1948, it's binding everyone onto the ship, the Commonwealth Electoral Act, The Government Savings Bank Act 1906. See, they've been planning this for so long. Under the 1959 Rules, Styles and Titles Act, the Queen holds the title to the land and seal. Now, Menzies was the first person to fly a blue flag, but only when Parliament was sitting, and it was called the New Age. And so we come down here, Menzies. He's the one that's lying about Maralinger. Then we've got Fadden. He didn't get voted in. Curtin. It's kind of the back end of the war. It's a bit quiet around here. Ford, Cuffley, Menzies. Now, this one here. Back in again, look. He knew what was going on. So, 1945, Prince Henry, Duke of Gloucester. That's who the Governor General was. 1953, the Queen came again. But don't forget our 62,000 Anzacs that died in World War II underneath the red flag ensign, which is what our flag is. On the 11th of February, the close of business, the New South Wales Rural Bank pulled all the pounds and replaced it with a private decimal currency that is registered to the private corporation. And anytime they did loans for houses moving forward under the Banking Act, they would need assets. And so they would take liens on the land as asset. And then all the money got shifted over into housing. So then by Monday, the 14th of February, everything was in decimal currency. They created a decimal currency act. These people signed that document. PM, the head of New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia. These people, if they're still alive, need hanging by the neck until dead. Any people in their family that are still benefiting in any way from any of the money that these people have made needs to be stripped from them or placed in jail. All heads of state of the government resigned from their positions as official line of authority under the Crown. They had a long time to plan this. They privately signed person to person, de facto user agreements contracts with a private corporation called the Commonwealth of Australia. It is essentially the Liberal Party. That means it's a unicameral government. There is no Labor and Liberal and Democrats. There's no Green Party. There's no Blue Party. There's no Independent Party. They all have to contract under the Liberal Party to play the pretend vote game. Now, some of the illegal acts committed by the unconstitutional Australian government are things like Section 44. If members of Parliament are of allegiance to a foreign country, they must vacate office immediately. Section 28, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution, Acts Interpretation Act 1973, Death Penalty Abolition Act 1973, Lands Acquisition Act 1973, Banking Act 1974, Governor General Act 1974, Parliament Act 1974, Australian Federal Police Act 1979. Oh, let me read out to you when you Google, is the Australian government a real government? It says it has a mixed system. It's a representative democracy. Not right now, it's not. Do you know who your local mayor is? Do you know who your representatives of your area that you live in? Do you know who the premier is? Do you know who decides what health things you can have? Do you know? Okay, we have to go back one by one, each of us. It's not someone else is going to sort this out. You have to stop engaging with it, but then they'll just take the money away. A constitutional monarchy? No, it's not. It is sitting there dormant. What kind of government does Australia have now? The government of Australia is the government of the Commonwealth of Australia, a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. It's also commonly referred to as the Australian government. Yeah, that's a business name. So is that. That's a business name as well. And Her Majesty is what's Her Majesty's government? That's a made-up person. Australian Constitution dates from 1901, when the dominions of the British Empire were not sovereign states. It does not use the term head of state. Australia is a constitutional monarchy. Government and academic sources described the Queen as the head of state, not her official title at all. In Australia, the Governor-General, the representative of the monarch, currently Queen Elizabeth II, and the administrator of government, given that the government in Australia, government can only exist in Australia with a valid Governor-General. Now, the Governor-General, not one single Governor-General since 1984 has held the most important document that the Governor-General should hold, which is letters patent, which gets to decide who controls the money on the trusts and the equity of the people, and letters patent, who decides who's going to be a judge, right? Lawyers don't have to be judges. I think just reasonable, sane, wise people should be judges, and they need at least 3 hallucinogenic experiences before even contemplating taking such a job. We need to bring Lucis back. Info sheet. But you get down here a bit lower, you've got the Australian government, also known as the Commonwealth Government. That's a business name. Government of Australia. There it is again. That's the other business name. And you go, look, corporations masking as governments in Australia. There we go. SEC. Commonwealth of Australia. And there's the number, 805151. I got it right, see? Sounds like Gollum on the roof. I think possums are up there. Standard Industrial Code. Here we go. Unknown. Business name. Massachusetts. That's in Google. That was surprising. Right. So the other half of the politics getting down and the laws. That's where it starts getting particularly dodgy. Okay, McEwen, Gordon, Billy McMahon, Gough Whitlam, John Kerr was the Governor-General at that stage. They were sleeping together, I think, I was told. So we got the Vietnam War that went on for way too long, 20-year war. I think we had, here we go. Vietnam War, 1960 to 75. Well, it's kind of a bit longer than that, but that's how long we were involved. 60,000 of our men died. We add that to the 62. That makes more, 3,000 wounded. JFK is assassinated in 63, and then 64 the Vatican takes over. 1973 dead at sea, Gough Whitlam. Now 1967, Harold Hope goes to the Exmouth military base in Perth, and he does not like what he's seeing. And I thought that maybe he really didn't want the minerals of Australia to be taken out, but he didn't object to the full raping of the country. And all of a sudden, he went missing off the coast of Victoria. He went for a swim, and his body was never found. I'd say he was murdered. So Pine Gap. Now, the treaty was already signed in 1966, post JFK, when the Vatican took over the military base in Central Australia. So in 1972, they created a duplicate government called the Australian government. It's called the Firm. They built a new Parliament House with that money. 1974 Governor-General Act, Private Seal of Corporation, Commonwealth of Australia, there's a number. 1975, Kerr sacks Whitlam. That would have been a bit awkward. Kerr writes 32 private letters to the Queen that were only released last year. So the worst things they signed were the Unidroit Treaty, which was basically handing over the entire mineral energy wealth of Australia to a foreign power, the Vatican. Thanks, Gough. That was good work, mate. So anyone associated with you of your family that is recruited or benefited in any way from the decisions that you've made are guilty of treason. 1980 Hague Convention, Article 4. Now, the 1980, the Georgia Stones were erected. 1981, Ronald Reagan was president. Oh yeah, from that money up here, they went and built another Parliament House. 1988, that was it's the orgy headquarters. The corporate headquarters where they do strange rituals and have orgies. Oh yeah, look, there's the bottom line to the Tasmania that signed that document. He's guilty too. They're all traitors. Her Majesty. Yeah, don't forget this thing. Now, when Federation started, 1901, and all the states, Commonwealth, all that, all the money got put into a consolidated revenue fund, which is what the government's meant to oversee. This is like, the people. Don't forget we had the Korean War going on as well. They created another 1973 Royal Styles and Title Act, but the Queen still would not put her seal to it. Of course, we need an Interpretation Act, so it's 1973 Acts Interpretation. It's ridiculous they churn legislation out like I don't know what. Australia Act. Oh, that piece of garbage. Oh yeah, these are the legislations that were written fraudulently. Australian Federal Police Act, did mention that. High Court of Australia Act, 1979. Judiciary Amendment Act, 1979. Australia Act again, there's two versions of it, one for the Queen, one for the people. Law and Justice Legislation Amendment Act, 1988, Section 80, replacing Common Law of Australia with the Common Law of England with the Common Law of Australia. Judiciary Act of 1903. Electoral Act, only members of Liberal Party can vote. So the Queen's official title is Elizabeth II, written the second, by the grace of God, Queen of Australia and her other realms and territories, head of the Commonwealth. It is not Foreign Queen. Elizabeth II, Her Majesty, Queen of Australia, head of the Commonwealth. That is what's written on legislation. So if that's what's written on legislation, it does not have her seal on it, which means it's not lawful. It's got no power or authority. It's just private corporations making up documents. Family law says all the other states, and then includes, which excludes all previous, Norfolk Island, Judges Pension Act. They're meant to be paid from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, but they're getting paid private dollars from the firm. In 1977, they wrote another constitution. They removed the Crown. 1979, Australian Federal Police. These are all unlawful legislations. A Queen refuses to give letters patent to a private corporation. Yeah, they removed. John Kerr had the Governor General has letters patent in his bedside table. It's been left to his family. The letters patent decides who are judges. Oh yeah, 1988, Antarctica city discovered. So there's 5,000 people or more down there, and pyramids underneath the ice at the Antarctica. There's a magnetic anomaly that showed up on the satellites. So the fallen angels are trapped there. In breach of Section 44 Constitution UK 1900, in breach of parliamentary rules, and are not able to give vote to create laws. Persian Gulf War, Iraq War, Afghanistan to present, Syria to present, Yemen to present, and Libya to present. Criminal Code Act 1995. Gain property. So they're taking your land, so you're going to get them. 1995, John Howard must have got the wobbles because he changed the definition of word to include body politic. 1999, the monarchy was disqualified. 1992, they created COAG, Council of Aussie Secrecy, I call it. Footnote 76, it's to hide the person-to-person contracts. So, Parliament House is a unicameral Liberal Party. That's all it is. A private, out-of-control Liberal Party that are all members of secret societies, and they're all involved. 1986 Australia Act, the most abominative act ever. 2 versions. Remove the seal, remove the crown, cut ties to the UK, brought in an emu and kangaroo, no referendum, no vote. Harmonic conversions happened in 87. If you're not too sure what that is, to go Google it. So even if they were a proper government, which they're not, they would be ultra-virus. 1994 Land Act. 1999 US bankruptcy ended. 1999 High Court rules fee simple free of torrent system. In 1999, the leaders of executive and the private court refused to give information to the Senate regarding any details to do with NASA or Pine Gap. Oh, that's the CEO of who? Tedros Ghebreyesus. Okay, 2001 Corporations Act, Section 127. Repeal Company Law Review Act, 1988. Removing need for corporate to use a seal on contracts. They're even removing the seal. They haven't got the right seal. They've got their own private user seal. Such a joke. 2004 Pine Gap, space-based infrared red system installed. So then war was declared 2001. We've been in a state of military law since then. Now, 2012 ended the 16,500 year cycle. 2013, the Fair Work Trade Act. What idiots have we got over here? Oh, here we go. This guy, Bill Hayden, him, all these people here, him, all Governor Generals, him, her, him, all of them. Yep. JobKeeper's $300 a week, and he's on $549 to $250 a week. That doesn't include expenses, plus the 160% additional pay he gets. And once you've been a Prime Minister, you continue to get that for the rest of your life, I believe. It's so disgusting. We've got homeless people and $80 million cut to services in 2018. If you haven't left Australia and seen that we are not the number one country in the world, it would be a nice awakening for you, because we sort of used to be 20 years ago. We were 30 years ago even, the land of plenty, but we are not. They have, the Lima Agreement completely and utterly destroyed industry in Australia. It took away 90% of all our farming. Abbott ditched renewable energy. Oh my God. Climate change is the biggest hoax they've ever pushed. So the Federal Reserve was born. Now, England repealed the Genocide Act. And of course, we've got the wonderful Emergency Management Act of 2020. Yeah, $80 billion cut in 2018. Scott Morrison cut to services. Our bankruptcy ended in 2018, and these 3 flags were salvaged. So, filed in March 2019, 1 year to complete the timeline. Espionage intelligence laws. Oh yeah, Wall Street stole 100 trillion, and 100 trillion was laundered through human trafficking and adrenochrome. 8 million children missing a year. Unbelievable, isn't it? Brigalow High Court 2004 or 2007, I think. Queensland ruled that all rural and city property, that the land is all theirs. Yep, 2003, Acts Amendment and Repeal Act unlawfully removes Crown and replaced with state. Davos, the World Economic Forum, they're doing all this without anyone knowing. It's like, I probably should have done this one first and then done the Queen one. I should do it again, huh? Got to show you another thing.
If you throw a stone into a pool, the ripples go on spreading outwards. A big stone can cause waves, but even the smallest pebble changes the whole pattern of the water. Our daily actions are like those ripples. Each one makes a difference, even the smallest. It does matter, therefore, what each individual does each day. Kindness, sympathy, resolution, and courteous behavior are infectious. Acts of courage and self-sacrifice, like those of the people who refuse to be terrorized by kidnappers or hijackers, or who defuse bombs, are an inspiration to others. And the combined effect can be enormous. If enough grains of sand are dropped into one side of a pair of scales, they will in the end tip it against a lump of lead. We may feel powerless alone, but the joint efforts of individuals can defeat the evils of our time. Together they can create a stable, free, and considerate society. Like those grains of sand, they can tip the balance. So take heart.
And then this little cracker.
Of recognition.
Oh, look at the body language.
Recognition that it was we who did the dispossessing. We took the traditional lands and smashed the traditional way of life.
Just snake this guy.
We brought the diseases and the alcohol. We committed the murders. We took the children from their mothers. We practiced discrimination and exclusion. It was our ignorance and our prejudice and our failure to imagine that these things could be done to us. We fail to ask, how would I feel if this was done to me? As a consequence, we fail to see that what we were doing degraded us all. Guilt, I think we've all learned, is not a very constructive emotion. I think what we need to do is to open our hearts a bit, all of us. Perhaps when we recognise what we have in common, it might help if we non-Aboriginal Australians imagined ourselves dispossessed of land we had lived on for 50,000 years, and then imagined ourselves told that it had never been ours. Imagine if ours was the oldest culture in the world and we were told that it was worthless. Imagine if we had resisted this settlement, suffered and died in the defence of our land, and then were told in history books that we'd given up without a fight. Imagine if non-Aboriginal Australians had served their country in peace and war and were then ignored in history books. Imagine if our feats on the sporting fields had inspired admiration and patriotism and yet did nothing to diminish prejudice. Imagine if our spiritual life was denied and ridiculed. Imagine if we had suffered the injustice and then were blamed for it. We cannot imagine that the descendants of people whose genius and resilience maintained a culture here through 50,000 years or more through cataclysmic changes to the climate and the environment, and who then survived 2 centuries of dispossession and abuse, will be denied their place in the modern Australian nations. We can't imagine that. More, I think, than most Australians recognise. The plight of Aboriginal Australians affects us all.
Does it?
We non-Aboriginal Australians should perhaps remind ourselves that Australia once reached out for us. Didn't Australia provide opportunity and care for the dispossessed Irish? Did it not for the poor of Britain, the refugees from war and famine and persecution in the countries of Europe and Asia?
I think they call that deflecting.
If it isn't reasonable to say that if we can build a prosperous and remarkable, harmonious, multicultural society in Australia, surely we can find just solutions to the problems which beset the first Australians, the people to whom the most injustice has been done. And with the spirit that is here today, I'm confident that we won't fail. I'm confident we will succeed in this decade. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Puke. Do you believe a word he says? See, it's like coag, isn't it? It's all smoke and mirrors. He didn't say anything solid, did he? Well, Bit speechless, really. I'm sure there's more information. I've got loads I've missed out. I just had to get that lot out of my head, but leave some comments. Share the video around if you think it's going to help digest or understand. We want to get back over to the left. We're stuck over on the right. The more people that know, the better. Then we can help them figure out how to navigate their vessel.